So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing the pod generation with us. One of the things that struck me about it almost immediately when I started watching it was the sort of utopian dystopia or dystopian utopia of it. Like I'm not sure the order of how those words would go, but the way where it has these kind of flavors of the things that we want, like an employer who cares about our mental health and all these things, and yet there's sort of an oppressive quality to the way it's been implemented. How, like, does that come from a particular sort of source for you or inspiration for you, or like how, like what shaped kind of the world that you built around this?
Yeah, well, Apple.
Apple.
No, it's this idea that technology, I feel, is very seductive, and it's making us feel all the time that we really want it. And then the whole idea of the film was to question how much do we give of ourselves every time we take a little bit of technology out of convenience. And that's how you feel, you know, you go to an Apple store and it's also desirable, it's so beautiful. They even have trees in there, like it's a biophilic environment. And it's the most disconnected you could be from nature. And so I was just looking at that and thinking, if Steve Jobs had to invent the artificial womb, would he make it, how would he design it? Like it would be something round and seductive and almost a fetish that you want to have. But then that's the problem with technology. It's like now we're so much in love with it that instead of the technology being a tool, we became enslaved to the tools. And then you see this mother on an app trying to connect with a baby who actually should be inside of her body. So it's just the absurdity of like our relationship to technology. It's not that much the technology, because the technology doesn't want anything. It's been created by us to serve us. But it's more, I feel like our relationship to it has become unhinged, completely unhinged. I mean, my generation, because I'm, you know, I won't say my age, but I'm in my late 40s. So I've seen a life without the phone. But I see my daughter who is 14, and I see her at breakfast. She's already on her thing. That's what her life has become. That thing has become everything. And it's insane. I think it's doing something to us, to our brain. It's like a reconfiguration of who we are. And this is nothing, because the next thing we're talking about, the artificial intelligence. When I went to San Francisco and was talking to people in artificial intelligence, and there you feel they took the blue pill and you're in Matrix. Their idea of humanity is like nothing to what we think is more or less normal, right? So there's always another step. So I just wanted the movie to look hyper normal. This is like, this could be tomorrow. And it could be, you know, our friends and us having this technology.
Yeah, it's got that great sort of, as you said, hyper-normal sort of subtlety to its sci-fi. It's very sci-fi, very kind of, things are very different from today, but I recognized a lot of things that I've at least seen in tech blogs or something, like the way it was printing food. I think I saw in an interview you'd referenced, I think 2001, and it definitely has that kind of very clean feel to it.
Yeah, I love Kubrick. But yeah, I think, I mean, sadly, I can bet that the womb, the artificial womb, is going to exist in 5 to 10 years, for sure. I've already been contacted, I was telling Adeline and you before the screening, by a biotech person who has a company in San Diego, and he saw the movie and he called me and he was like, I really want to talk to you because I'm developing this technology and I have questions about the design. And I was telling him, it's a cautionary tale, don't do it. Whatever you're doing, just don't do it. And he's like, well, I have all this financing. I was like, I don't want to hear about it. It's just like, no. This is insane. I mean, that's the word. And the problem, I think, is with every technological advancement, which I'm not saying we should go back, live as cavemen, but we don't ask ourselves the right questions. So all the ethical, philosophical, humanistic questions we're going to ask ourselves after the fact. And this is what's happening with ChatGPT. They've launched ChatGPT in January, actually when the movie was premiering at Sundance, and everyone was laughing about it a year ago. The chatbot was ridiculous. It was like Eliza in the movie. It was like a circular conversation. And now it's pretty impressive. And the next one is going to be even crazier. And we haven't been consulted as citizens. All they did is put it on the market, have 100 million people connect to this, take all the information, take all the intellectual property of humanity, and no one has been consulted. Mm-hmm. Do we want to be part of this? At least we could have a debate before, like a democratic debate. At least we could vote to decide if we want Elon Musk and his friends to shape the future of humanity. But it's not even a conversation. Mm-hmm. And then they go to Congress and they're like, oh, no, you can regulate us if you want. It's already too late. And that's what's going to happen with the womb. They're going to have an artificial womb, which I think is just an allegory for technology in general. There's a baby in there, but it's just, for me, the egg is just a symbol of any tech you want to put in there. And then they're going to have this thing, and then they're going to say, oh, right, so does that empower women, or it makes women redundant? Oh, we didn't ask ourselves the question. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I wanted to make the movie more like a satire, you know, like... I really liked a movie that Adam McKay did. I think in America it was received in a very polarized way, but Don't Look Up. Mm. Because it was this form of denial, you know, like this thing is arriving and we're all looking the other way and it's coming, but like we don't want to, there's so many other issues that every day we have to face that we're pushing further and further the confrontation with the real questions. Yeah. Which is really, what are we ready to give of ourselves for convenience? Yeah. You know, we've given orientation, our sense of orientation to the GPS already, that's gone. We can't orient ourselves. What is the next thing? Writing books, making movies, creating music, like all the brain activities can be replaced very easily now. Yeah. Like in 5 years, probably entire movies will be made with one prompt or, you know, they say like the job of the future will be prompter. You'll be prompting things. Huh. But it's a little bit like in Her, the Spike Jonze movie, where there's this loneliness of we're going to be alone in front of computers prompting things. I don't know. No. Maybe not. Maybe we'll resist it. We'll do something different. I'm not sure. But these are the questions I was interested to look at.
And I think you bring up a lot of them very well in the film. You mentioned the sort of like, is this feminist, is this not feminist? And you didn't spend a lot of time in it in the film, but you definitely, you raise it when they go by the protesters. But that also, do you think that the way, and I know not everybody's satisfied with the result of it, but the way that AI became with the result, but not everybody's satisfied with the result, but the way that AI specifically was a sticking point in the writer strikes and the actor strikes, do you think that there's any hope in the way that they stood up to try to avoid being
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the first human movement to raise against what was going on. And the big chapter, because I'm in the WGA, so I followed the strike very closely. And one of the biggest chapter was the artificial intelligence, where the studios were like, oh, we're just going to take all the intellectual property of like decades of work from screenwriters, and we're going to do machine learning, and then we're going to just prompt screenplays. And the writers were like, no. No, because like, first of all, who gave access to all these production from human minds, you know, like, and the movies will be, I'm not too worried, because I think if you want to make an artificial intelligence generated movie, we already have them, you know, Marvel, like that's the recipe. They can do that for the next Barbie. These are franchise. It doesn't really matter that much that it's made by a machine or by a human. But like the independent films, you know, like there's a resistance that you need to have in the cultural world, because otherwise it's going to become a totalitarian regime where very few people are going to decide what movies we want to see. And George Orwell talks about that very well in his correspondence. He say, when you have a minority of people who know better than you what's good for you, you're already in a totalitarian regime. And that's basically what Netflix is doing with the algorithm. They already know, before you even know, what movies you should be watching. So the sense of, you know, coming across culture that is not that is just by chance, or something that is going to disrupt you, or it's going to make you uncomfortable, or that's what art is about. It's not just watching things that you're going to be watching, so you're locked in an algorithmic bubble, you know. And that's what I feel is destroying our democracy. Is like now everyone is like functioning in echo chambers, only listening what they want to listen, only consuming what they want to consume, and then, you know, it creates like a lot of intolerance. And I've had this at film school. You know, I was teaching at Columbia University. I did a masterclass even in France at La Fémis, which is the most famous film school there. And the students, I felt, they're very radical in like they didn't want to talk about certain filmmakers, but in a very radical way. I was like, this is part of the history of filmmaking. You can't just, it's not because you cancel it in your mind that it doesn't exist. It's better to confront it and talk about it and say, what do we like about those filmmakers? What we don't like about it? Why is it relevant today or not? Than just say, we don't want to hear about them. They don't exist for us. You know, and I'm talking about the usual suspect, but like Polanski, which in France, he lives in France and he's like a big subject in France. But you could still talk about Chinatown.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece. But a teacher was trying to show Chinatown, and the students pulled the projector and broke the projector, and I think the teacher got fired. So this is becoming too much. And this is created also by this algorithmic, which is very paradoxical, because those students would completely negate that this happens because of Netflix. But somehow it is how the culture now is transmitted through, you know, like bubbles of intolerance. And when I talk to film students, I'm like, you're an artist. You're supposed to be subversive. You're supposed to go where you don't feel comfortable. That's where you're going to create culture. And you don't have to agree with the values of filmmakers that you reject politically, or which I understand, but you could still have this debate. You could still talk about it. If we can't talk about it, we're not in a democracy. Like, so it's very complicated today. It's very loaded, and it's very complicated, and it's ultra politicized, sometimes for no reason. Not everything is a political thing, you know, like especially in art, I think.
Yeah, we can't really talk about why it's a problem if we don't, or why the creator of something is a problem, and like the nuance of that, if we don't engage with the work.
So one interesting example is Roald Dahl. They had two versions of Roald Dahl on Netflix. There's one version that's expurgated of anything that could shock anyone. So a character cannot be fat, he has to be tall. And that version is cheaper. And the original version that has like all the weird characters is more expensive. It's very strange. How is culture separated that the expurgated version is more accessible, but it completely betrays what Roald Dahl was trying to do. He was trying to show that humanity is weird and disturbing for children, that adults are really strange creatures from the perspective of, you know, children, and it was the culture of that time. I don't know what Roald Dahl's political position was, but the work was the work he intended a certain way. And the fact that Netflix decides that they can make an agreement with the estate of Roald Dahl and change completely his work and make it more accessible and cheaper is extremely disturbing for writers, for people that work in, you know, making art. So it's a censorship. It's a sort of censorship. But it's a very dangerous territory in which you enter when you want to talk about those things today. I feel it's
there's lost nuance because of those algorithms. Like they
I think it's we're being brainwashed without even being aware of it. You know, that's what's happening. But then there'll be resistance, like the writer's strike. There's always, human beings always have the free will to stand up and say, no, we don't want this. And that's the beauty of us as human beings. We don't have to accept everything. But the trend is, you could see what culture has become. In New York, like you see, like how many independent theaters have closed. You know, how difficult it is to see a movie in theaters today. They stay for a week and then they're gone and they go to streamer, which is nice because on streamer you could actually catch them at least.
Mm-hmm.
But the time of like 20 years ago where you could go see a movie for many weeks in a small theater in New York is almost gone.
Yeah.
So things, I mean, not everything is negative, but like things are changing in a way that the culture is becoming more conformist and a few people are deciding, I think, what we should be watching.
Yeah. And we don't even necessarily know who those people are. We
Well,
know the company they work for.
Yeah. These 5 companies deciding what we should,
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
I love the way you balanced different aspects of it, really made people think, and then putting nature with everything. I'm wondering, now that you said what you just said, that backlash that is already happening, and you reflected a bit of it in the protests and the conflict between the couples with everything in society. Do you think we're close to that happening, given the fact that the changes are happening so fast?
I'm not sure I understand, like that there will be a backlash.
That there is a backlash
Yeah.
in your film and in society, and because technology moves so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Do you predict, like I'm predicting, I'm just trying to see if we're on the same page with that there will be that backlash that will define the moment, and what will stay, what will go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know, but like I think there's going to be a lot of tension when, if you follow the whole drama with Sam Altman and what happened last week with OpenAI, one of the reasons I think it's because they already have the ChatGPT number 12 or whatever, it's already there, and they don't know what to do with it because it's so powerful, and no one has been consulted, and so now you have this ticking bomb, and there's going to be a lot of. I think, yeah.
And on that note, I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild, so
yeah.
supporting the writers and
Yeah.
dealing with that, and I'm part of the backlash. So
Yeah, for sure. So actors were,
all of that and the scanning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think it was very important that actors maintained. Everyone was surprised that the strike, was a lot of people had to sell their houses, couldn't pay their mortgages, but there is so much desire to not give up. The one guild that's very strange is the directing guild, because they don't feel they're part of this. They did the strike for 1 minute, and then they sign an agreement. And I'm a director, so I feel like I'm not in a GGA, but I feel like they should be part of this thing too, because their job is also gonna, and even if your job is not the first one to be taken as solidarity, you should also be part of a movement that realizes that, this is going way too fast, and it's actually not done in a very humanistic way, because the right questions are not being asked. And there's going to be, for sure, like movements of tension, social tension. When you pull the rug under the feet of people are not prepared for it. This is not just an industrial revolution. This is like redefining entirely everything. And it's already embedded in everything. It's going to be like apps, artificial intelligence is going to be everywhere. And it's great for certain things, like for treatment of cancer or this kind. It's not all negative. There's some great things about it. But the debate should exist at least to know what is this future? What is it going to look like? And who controls it, exactly? If it's 5 people controlling the destiny of 7 billion people, it feels a little bit unhinged. They have a little bit too much power. And if you read the biography of Elon Musk, which I'm reading right now, it's very scary to see like what they have in their mind and how they see the world, and it's very strange.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there another? I see over there.
Yeah, was Alvy's character always a botanist, or did you play with other career paths for him, or for Rachel, her name was? Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, he was based on a real character, a botanist I met in New York at a conference. He was the head of the Washington, D.C. Botanical Garden, and he gave a conference about plant reproduction. And he gave this example that I couldn't believe, that he had students, they were studying to become botanists or work in that field. And he took them to a field trip in Italy, and there was like a fig tree, and he wanted them to try, and they would not try a fruit from the tree because they thought maybe it was toxic, and they only used to the supermarket figs under paper wrap. So he was so shocked that they would not. For them, they were studying nature, but nature was something that could be toxic, and they weren't used to it. And I thought, oh, this is such a great character, someone who is such an utopian, and he loves nature, but he can see it's fading, because I think you can't love something if you're not in contact with it. How are you going to protect and love something? It can't just be a theory. You have to be part of it. And we're so disconnected from nature, being New Yorkers. What access do we have to nature? And those students didn't have, they thought they loved nature, but they had zero access to nature. It was just from the books and from the YouTube. And so I thought it could be an interesting character to put in the future, when the nature had been domesticated and commodified, which I'm sure it will be. You already see, like in the cafe, like the biophilic walls, and the nature comes to the city because we're not going to nature anymore. But it's also a marketing thing. It's like it's branding.
Yes, it was a very thought-provoking film. Thank you very much. I guess my question to you is, what I found interesting, what I enjoyed a lot in it as a satire were the comedic moments. So I was wondering if you could share with us how they came about. Were they improv? Were they in a script? How did those moments, those funny moments, evolve throughout the process?
Well, the script, we didn't have much time. It's a small movie. It looks like big on screen, but it's a small budget, and we didn't have many days of shooting, so it's all scripted. And then we played a little bit, in the montage with the physical comedy, because Chiwetel has this beautiful range. As an actor, he could go from Shakespeare to slapstick comedy, and I was like, let's use, the way he was doing it was very graceful, but very funny in a way. And to his credit, I have to say, not that many actors wanted to play that role of like goofing around with an egg and still be a man. And so we had a lot of fun on set, trying little things. But most of it was written, because when you have actually, Chiwetel was expecting his first child. So it was very strange because he was having all the hormones of parenthood, and we had to schedule everything to give him paternity leave. And we took like a pregnancy insurance in case his wife would give birth not at the right moment. This would really be an issue with the film. And I'm making a film about, I can't just say, no, you're not going to have your paternity leave. And I'm making a film about. So we calculated everything. And luckily, this baby came at the right moment, but he had a month off. And so he left the movie, he became a dad, and when he came back, we shot the scenes where he's taking this baby out of the... And it was really beautiful because he was very emotional. He was crying. And then when we were shooting the scenes with the egg before, like when his wife was pregnant, I would say cut, and he would hold on the egg, and he wouldn't let go. And I was like, you could let go. And he was like, I'm starting to bond with this. So I think he had all these hormones, it was really beautiful to see that gorgeous man like having, paternal instinct and being proud of it. And so yeah, it was, it's those moments in filmmaking that you're like, what are the odds that he's actually having a baby while we're shooting a movie about pregnancy?
Yes, sir.
The scene with the grocery store of babies, how did you do that?
So that's a dream I had when I was pregnant, that I was in a supermarket buying a baby and they were offering me a second baby that I absolutely didn't want. So I wanted to make that dream in my first film with Giamatti. and it was a much smaller movie than this. And so I had it all in mind, but it was going to be all in camera. Like they were supposed to bring babies, and we were going to shoot. And then the babies arrived. They were toddlers. I was like, what is this? They're walking. So we couldn't shoot that scene, but I made a promise to myself that I would shoot this scene in a movie. I would make this scene. And when I was writing this, I was like, that's it. I'm going to put this dream in that movie. It's perfect. And I'm going to get it out of my system and my subconscious. And so we did it. We had 18 babies on set. The first AD almost had a heart attack because every time a baby would cry, we would put them, the mothers were all there with their babies. They would put the babies in the shelves, and one baby would start crying, and all the babies would start crying. And then I was like, it's okay, baby cry, we're gonna shoot, who cares? And then because it's only 18 babies, and then in VFX, we just multiply them forever. But so it was intense because if you put a mother, I just have one child, but if you're a mother and you see your baby on a shelf on a movie set crying, the first thing you're gonna go to your baby. And then you have all those, it's back and forth. It was hell. They say two things: do not shoot with babies or animals. You know, it's like the two things that destroys your schedule and you. But we're lucky because the French cat, Gaspard, was a very good actor. And we didn't lose any time with him. He was on cue, he was doing everything. And we were lucky also with the baby that was the born baby. He was amazing. He did like all these things on cue. He opened his eyes, he reached his arms to Emilia, Clarke. And this was luck because in Belgium, actually, you can only shoot on set with a newborn. Those babies were 4 years old. And in France, it's forbidden. They have to be 3 months old, so it doesn't look realistic. But in Belgium, you could do it. But you can only have them 1 hour. And then they have to leave the set. And so all those babies were sleeping. They're so profoundly asleep. And I was like, well, we're going to take them off the egg. They're going to be sleeping. Like, we have no scene. And this one baby did all this stuff. And when he's in bed also, he like moved his arms on cue. Like the parents were like, he's the next Brad Pitt.
There you go. He's born for it. He's born for it.
It's like...
I think we can do one more from the audience. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Could you talk a little bit about the research and process that went into developing some of the technology beyond the pod? So a lot of the AI kind of served as a tertiary character, and a lot of the screens, the UIs that the characters were interacting with. Can you talk a little bit about the production of that?
Yeah, a lot was, so I was joking when I was writing that I was researching into the future, which is, but I was talking to a lot of people in the Silicon Valley, people, you know, developing those tools, but none of the things looked cinematic. You know, like I love this movie, Her, the Spike Jonze movie, but it's a voice. And I was like, we can't redo that. It's been done and he's a master and I can't. So we have to come with something that's cinematic. And then I thought the eye, because of Kubrick, what if it's an eye and that actually interacts with you, which I think is what technology of the future is going to be very confusing because you're never going to know if it's a digital thing, if it's an organic thing, and it's going to be embedded in a way that's very confusing for us because our brain has been developed through millions of years to love nature. So that's why when you see an eye, you're immediately drawn to talk to it because it looks like an eye, but it's all fake, it's VFX. But we made the eye moist and like the eye is blinking. It has no reason to blink, it's not an eye that's alive, but it was creating the illusion with the production designer. We thought, let's create the illusion of the organic, of this could be creatures that are strangely alive, so then the human being is opening his heart or talking to it. And I think that's what they're going to be doing if they have, because the shrinks already exist, like they've tested that at Stanford. A lot of students tried the artificial intelligence therapy, and they say they felt more comfortable with the artificial therapist than a human therapist because they didn't feel judged. She's kind of insane. I mean, when you think of therapy, it's true. Do you want to say everything to a human being that has a bias or judge you? Or do you want to talk to that eye? No, I don't know. But so maybe that's the one technology that I feel could be interesting in a way to just, you know, because a lot of I see a lot of my friends have done therapy for 25 years and they're going nowhere and they're just like rehashing the same issues. So maybe something is not working in the human way of doing it. But yeah, I think a lot is imagination. We just had so much fun. During the pandemic, we were drawing all those tech things and thinking, you know, what could it look like that it's cinematic and funny and beautiful at the same time. And we wanted to make it Scandinavian and Japanese. Like there is a lot of elements of how I wanted it to look. And then a lot is the production designer he's very brilliant. It's his first feature. He's done a lot of commercials, but this was his first feature really as a production designer, and he had so much fun. He was just going for it. And
yeah, the production design is really, really wonderful in the way that that hyper normal that you were talking about. It really.
I mean, it's all shot on locations because we didn't have any money, not that much money for that kind of film. And then there's some few VFX stuff like the tree with the pods, the nature. So this one is a VFX. But all the locations we found in Belgium, in Brussels, for New York in 50 years.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense at all.
But it's still
filmmaking.
It still felt about right. And the eyes in particular struck me as soon as it came because there is an element where it adds to that sense of you're being watched by the technology because the technology is being represented by literally what watches you eyes.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So you've got the Pod Generation, you've got Madame Bovary and Cold Souls out there as well. What's next? Where can we find out what's coming up?
Next is it's a surreal I would say it's not a biopic, but it's a surreal movie about Edward Hopper, the painter, and his wife, who was his muse. So it's a triangle love story between the muse, the wife, and Hopper. And the muse and the wife is played by the same actress. So it's a bit like adaptation meets Purple Rose of Cairo, this kind of strange, funny movie.
That's wonderful. And y'all can tell people to watch the Pod Generation on basically every platform people can rent and buy it on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's on Hulu and Amazon Prime.
And Apple as well. So
On
thank
the
you.
phone.
Oh, and on your phone. Watch it on your phone.
Don't
let the algorithm tell you to watch it. Go and find it yourself. Tell people. Be the algorithm for your friends. So yeah, thank you again for joining us.
So
Thank you
much.
for watching it with us.